You resolve conflict better. When you resolve conflict better, what that means is that you have, instead of calling people names, instead of using blames, instead of fanning the flames, my first name isn't James because I'm skeptical spectrum. And remember that there's a river called the Thames, which doesn't rhyme with names. You resolve conflict better because you are not going on the attack. You're not using blame. You're not using judgment words because you're starting to notice what's going on in them is a struggle, and they're trying to solve a problem when they're doing their crappy behaviors and when they're not agreeing with you and those kind of things, because you know that's what's happening inside of you. You know that when you're getting agitated and aggravated and eventually becoming a full-on bastard, you are really having a problem inside that you're having trouble fixing, and you're just desperately trying to. And desperation can look like you're a real jerk, and then you have trouble making real decisions, and all of a sudden your impulses actually take over, and you can do very bad things like cursing people out, making little children cry, punching people in the face, screaming at the car in front of you, trying to cut people off, voting for the wrong people. Oh, don't vote drunk. All right, please don't vote drunk. Um, so what happens is you resolve conflict better because you start to think of what happened, what you observed that person do, which, by the way, they might observe themselves doing something else, and you don't like attack each other's reality. You just both agree that you saw it differently, and you start to look inside and realize how you felt when they did that or when whatever happened, right? So that's a feeling. Those matter. You're like, yeah, I don't want to feel like crap, and I feel like crap when people take advantage of me or whatever. But don't use the word take advantage. You name things in observable ways. We're starting to try to be smart here, people. So when you say, when you took my bicycle and you chained it with yours, like, right, I just made that up off the top of my head. The next thing you talk about is your feeling. I guess I felt real agitated and mystified and angry and like confused, you know. And then you say, I don't even have a bicycle. So then now you don't have to say these things in this order, but this is how compassion matches with better negotiation. Because you're naming what happened. At the end, you'll name what you want to see happen, right? And it's like there's this thing called needs that Marshall Rosenberg threw in there, but that sometimes complicates it. Needs are like abstract ideas that we know that most people can understand wanting from time to time. That's what needs are. Needs are wants. But these are put into an abstract form. So things like justice, things like security, things like, so if somebody like locked up my bike, we were bicycling together and I had my own bike lock and we stopped somewhere to get some coffee and they locked up my bike with theirs with mine. Um, I might be wondering what's going on in their head, but that does not matter unless that's okay. I'll tell you in a second. So I might say something like, "I need independence," right? I want to have my bike like I want to have my bike unlocked or locked by myself, so I can leave anytime I want because you never know, right? I just want that, and I want consideration, even though my idea might sound stupid and it's not really true independence or whatever. I want you to consider the fact that this is how I see it, and it's my bike, and so I would hope that you would honor, and also that you could say my own. What do they call it? Like my own sense of ownership. Yeah, you know what I mean. So you could say that. So that's that. That's the needs. You don't have to say any or all of these, but you might have to if the conversation is lingering, and it's better than all the other stuff you're going to say to the person. And then finally, you might say, "So could you unlock mine and let me lock mine up?" And the person, you might go. So this is a mild example, but people use some strategies like this. You want to get to the core of what the other person is doing. Now, the other person might say, well, this is freaking easier, dude. And your compassion is going to say he's not communicating very well, or she isn't. And you're going to say, well, what are you saying? Are you saying that one lock is easier than another lock, and you just feel more comfortable doing it this way, so it's quicker when we leave? Something like that. He might say, yeah, or he might say not that and everything like that. But your compassion is going to drive you to want to know what's going on inside of the other person, what their idea really was. You don't guess. You can guess, but you can then you have to check in with them. I'm guessing that you wanted this. Is that right? You know what I'm saying? You don't mind read. You don't put words in their mouth because that's what we typically do. What is it? You think I'm stupid? Did the guy say you were stupid? No. So you could say, hey, listen, I don't think you think I'm stupid, but right now I'm a little agitated. So that's the only thought I can have. But I don't think you could think I'm stupid. So why did you lock my bike up? I mean, what was the intent there? Oh, I was just trying to make it faster, you know. "Oh, okay, I get it. So do you mind? I mean, would no, you don't have to ask, do you mind? You don't have to be like permission asking, but I would like you to, unlock my bike so I can lock mine up separately. Because that just gives me autonomy and it's not going to hurt anything. And I think it'll be just as fast if you're unlocking your bike while I'm unlocking mine. Now, these things can turn into arguments, but the point is when you do this frequently, you revert to this more quickly in conversation. So arguments become conversations. And so you wind up having somebody not fight against you anymore, but someone who's hearing that you're trying to understand what they did, you care about them, and you care about yourself just as much. You're trying to get them to do something. Somewhere along the line, you guys might resolve this in like some surprising way. Like, you know what? We've talked about it long enough. Let's just go eat and we'll come back. I don't really care. And it could go the other way. The person might be like, okay, I get it. It kind of makes sense. I have this tendency to just want to do things fast. I rush a lot of times. And I also have this feeling of like if I don't lock both bikes up, you might forget to lock yours. And I was actually being absent-minded when I did it. And you might decide, but you name what you saw at the beginning, you name what you would like to see at the end, and you honor everything they thought and everything they feel, and you honor and even express some of what you thought and some of what you feel. Because it's the feelings that take over our behavior. I want to repeat that. It's the feelings that take over our behavior. So if we want to choose our behaviors instead of having your involuntary nervous system take over your body, you want to have a conversation that's less and less threatening, that's more and more understanding, and you're going to want to ask for that back. And if they're not understanding, you're going to make them understand anyway because you're going to ask everybody to slow down and you're going to explain what your motivations are inside. And over time, people's heart rates will go down and people actually start to make choice behaviors. Their thoughts will be very different than when everybody's stimulated about a particular conflictual moment. So you can resolve conflict better if you have compassion, if you practice compassion. I would say formalize your practice of compassion. Try to understand, try to learn what emotion words look like. Try to understand what it feels like well, remember the worst times you felt and what you wanted people to do for you. And also challenge your internal thinking with you could do Socratic methods of challenging your typical automatic thoughts and all this stuff. But the best thing you'll learn is how to slow down and have the same amount of compassion for yourself as you have for the other person. Um, so it's an intellectual, emotional game. And one reason to be compassionate is because cultures are different and people aren't. So when you're talking to various people, they all come from a slightly different cultural mix than you. Everybody. Their family is a particularly unique culture, you know? And so you're just going to have to, unfortunately, maybe learn where they're coming from, and then when you get a handle on that, you're going to be in a lot better position to understand what they need, and also what you need. And why do I say cultures are different, people aren't? Because, yeah, that's true. Because we all have Well, that's not completely true. We don't all have common circuitry. We have common circuitry plus unique circuitry. So people are the same and people are all different from each other. So it just means that compassion means I it will help me to know what this person is like and what's going on inside them. And it will help them because the thing is, you do care. Most of you care about other people. I didn't mean to remind you of that. Don't be a doormat. Okay, I'm going to move on past that one. Don't be compassionate all the time. There's such a thing as compassion fatigue. Um, if you're in a line of work where you use compassion and you know who you are, um, you're going to have to like sit down sometimes. You're going to have to go on a vacation if you can. You're going to have to plop yourself in front of the TV. You're going to have to take naps on weekends or something. You're going to have to find coping mechanisms that make you feel good. You're going to have to watch entertainment. You're going to have to probably go to places where people are compassionate toward you, maybe even for a living. You're going to have to, yeah, get pleasure, find pleasure. Not the kind of pleasure that backfires, though. Calculated pleasure. Pleasure, I'll talk about that in a second, I think. Um, but pursue rest and recovery. Just do it. There's no like, nowadays we're realizing that a lot of what we do for ourselves has to be intuitive. You have to notice what reaction your mind and body have when you do things. So if you eat certain things, how does it feel in the moment? How does it feel 30 minutes later? How does it affect you a month later? Like weight gain and all that stuff. The same with any medicines you take, the same with any recreational drugs you take, the same with any recreational activities you do. The same with the entertainment you see, the same with the people you hang out. How does it make you feel short term, a little while later, long run, right? That's how you have to think. And you can journal about this stuff. You can plan stuff out. By the way, I believe planning is very good. Get yourself calendars, get yourself journals, get yourself dot journals, whatever helps you coordinate things, makes you a better self-interest person and a better social activist in terms of helping others without hurting yourself. Um, so I put it right here: balance immediate, intermediate, and long term pleasure. Seek pleasure, right? The emotions you have either are feeling good, feeling or feeling painful. And you can't just constantly feel any of them. You can probably feel like crap for a very long time because that has to do with possibly, well, anyway. But you can't like hit the height of pleasure all the time. That's what I was going to talk about. I think I mentioned this before, but I felt really depressed after some peak moments in my life, and that's because I used up like all the joy juice and the neurotransmitters and the hormones that were inside me after those peak pleasures. Or I was tired, and that's your body's way of saying lay down and get your pleasure again some other time. Right now, just don't do much. Still though. The next one is to get used to uncomfortable feelings. Get used to uncomfortable feelings, including non disordered depression. Get used to uncomfortable feelings because when I feel acute, painful feelings, I swear to you, after days, weeks, months, years of practice at each stage, I noticed some improvement. What I do is I make sure I'm breathing adequately. Sometimes it's in through the nose, out through the mouth. I like to do the out breath longer. And what happens when you're doing that, when you're breathing and paying attention to your breath and you're trying to do some version of deep breathing that's comfortable, is that all that does, in my opinion, is make sure you're not restricting your breath because you're probably restricting your breath unless you're thinking about it. And then when horrible feelings and thoughts come through me, they peak and then they pass away, just like every single thing in the world. I might cry them out, they might fade away, I might shiver. My whole body might soften, all my muscles might get loose. A lot of times it gives me mild relief. But right now, it's allowing me to slow down and let my sort of more, conscious, choosing, slow processing brain to come online, as opposed to the fast, action oriented, somewhat involuntary talking that I was doing while I was at the beginning of this video up until this exercise. But I can feel aches between my scapulae, I think that's what they're called. And I can feel like congestion, but I can feel different kinds of tingling around my body when I breathe, nice, warm, tingling stuff. And just feeling like oxygenated, less tension. I can tell what my face is doing. It seems like there's tension around my eyes and that sort of thing. That's how to deal with all kinds of emotions. One, especially unpleasant emotions, because really the unpleasant emotions will not harm you physically unless you have them and let them be chronic. So pausing and stopping, not just resting, but sometimes actively meditating, noticing the pain inside. That actually can make it peak a little bit. Like you might feel like, oh my gosh, it's getting worse. This isn't working. But really, over time, it'll probably subside, unless like you have a lack of electrolytes, then you could really cramp up. But that has nothing to do with the meditation part. So learn to embrace negative emotions, because or painful or uncomfortable emotions, really, because they're not going to hurt you. And if you learn to breathe through them, they'll be like weather. Storms rise and the storms dissipate. So righteous indignation, that's one of the great feelings you get when you're trying to be compassionate. You just feel like you're the one who knows what's good and nice and harmonious and loving and what is it? Passionate, compassionate. Yeah, yeah. So I'm the one that's doing good for the world. That's a great feeling. So that's one of the rewards you can get from being compassionate. The problem is that sometimes you get the sense of righteous indignation. And if you watch a lot of the people on the news nowadays, you can tell they're like wrong and they're doing evil. So you got to be careful even of the feeling of righteous indignation. What do people say? People who are self-righteous are more self than righteous. All right, so everything I'm talking about is very difficult, but it's better than everything else.